How did a failed artist from Austria develop such an obsessive, murderous hatred toward an entire people that he turned one of the most advanced nations in Europe into a killing machine? This is not simply the story of one man's personal hatred. This is the story of how ancient religious prejudice, 19th century racial theories, economic scapegoating, political opportunism, and national humiliation combined to create one of the darkest chapters in human history. Today, we're going to answer one of the most important and disturbing questions of the modern era. Why did Hitler hate the Jews? And where did Nazi anti-Semitism really come from? Let's begin at the beginning. For centuries, anti-Semitism had existed across Europe in different forms. In medieval times, Jews were often blamed for everything from plagues to economic hardship, blood libels, false accusations that Jews murdered Christian children for rituals, spread fear, and led to violent pogroms. During the Black Death, Jews were falsely accused of poisoning wells, resulting in the massacre of entire communities. By the 19th century, something even more dangerous emerged. Traditional religious anti-Semitism slowly transformed into racial anti-Semitism. Instead of seeing Jews as a religious group that could convert, many now viewed them as a separate, inferior biological race that could never be fully assimilated into European society. This pseudoscientific idea would prove catastrophic. Adolf Hitler was born in 1889 in Austria. As a young man, he moved to Vienna, a city filled with both cultural brilliance and rising anti-Semitic sentiments. Hitler struggled as an artist, living in poverty and failing to gain admission to the Academy of Fine Arts. He later claimed that his hatred of Jews began during these difficult years in Vienna, where many successful Jews were prominent in arts, medicine, journalism, and business. World War I became a turning point for him. Hitler served as a soldier on the Western Front and was decorated for bravery. When Germany surrendered in 1918, he was devastated. Like many Germans, he refused to believe that Germany had been defeated militarily. Instead, the dangerous stab-in-the-back myth spread rapidly. The false belief that Germany had been betrayed from within by socialists, communists, and especially Jews. This myth would become a cornerstone of Nazi ideology. After the war, Germany descended into chaos. Hyperinflation destroyed people's savings. Political violence erupted in the streets between communists and right-wing nationalists. Many Germans felt deeply humiliated by the harsh Treaty of Versailles. It was in this atmosphere of anger, shame, and despair that Hitler joined a tiny nationalist group in Munich called the German Workers' Party. He quickly rose to become its leader and transformed it into the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. Hitler proved to be an extraordinarily powerful speaker. He could channel the rage and frustration of ordinary Germans like no one else. He took existing prejudices and wove them into a simple but powerful narrative. Germany's problems were not due to military defeat, economic mismanagement, or political failure. They were caused by the Jews. In 1925, while imprisoned after a failed coup attempt known as the Beer or Putsch, Hitler wrote Mein Kampf. In this book, he openly expressed his hatred, describing Jews as a racial poison, a threat to German blood purity, and the hidden force behind both capitalism and communism. He portrayed them as a global conspiracy working to destroy the German nation. These ideas were not entirely new, but Hitler packaged them with fanatical intensity and turned them into a political movement. At the core of Nazi anti-Semitism was a deadly combination of old and new hatreds. Traditional Christian anti-Semitism had portrayed Jews as Christ killers and outsiders. Modern racial theory added the pseudo-scientific claim that Jews were a biologically inferior race that threatened to pollute the so-called Aryan race through intermarriage. The Nazis also pushed contradictory conspiracy theories. On one hand, they accused Jews of being greedy capitalists who controlled banks and big business. On the other hand, they claimed Jews were behind godless communism and the Bolshevik Revolution. This allowed them to blame Jews for whatever problems suited their propaganda at any given moment. Hitler repeatedly claimed that Jews were responsible for Germany's defeat in World War I through the stab in the back. He accused them of undermining German culture, morality, and national strength. In Nazi ideology, Jews were not just enemies. They were an existential threat that had to be removed for Germany to survive and achieve its destiny. Joseph Goebbels and the Nazi propaganda machine repeated these lies relentlessly through posters, films, newspapers, radio broadcasts, and public speeches. Over time, millions of ordinary Germans came to accept at least parts of this poisonous worldview. Once the Nazis gained power, in 1933, they moved step by step toward their ultimate goal. First came economic boycotts of Jewish businesses and the dismissal of Jews from government jobs and universities. In 1935, the Nuremberg Laws stripped Jews of German citizenship and banned marriage between Jews and non-Jews. Jewish doctors, lawyers, and teachers were gradually pushed out of their professions. Then came the night of violence, known as Kristallnacht. In November 1938, synagogues were burned, Jewish shops were destroyed, and thousands of Jews were arrested and sent to concentration camps. With the outbreak of World War II in 1939, persecution rapidly escalated into systematic murder. After the invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, mobile killing squads known as Einsatzgruppen began mass shootings of Jewish communities in Eastern Europe. By early 1942, the Nazis had decided on the final solution: the plan to murder every Jew in Europe. At the Wannsee Conference in January 1942, high-ranking Nazi officials coordinated the logistics of genocide. Death camps such as Auschwitz, Treblinka, Sobibor, and Belzec were built with the sole purpose of industrial-scale murder. By the end of the war in 1945, approximately 6 million Jews, two-thirds of European Jewry, had been systematically murdered in what became known as the Holocaust. So why did Hitler hate the Jews with such obsessive intensity? It was never just one reason. It was a toxic mixture of many factors. Centuries of European anti-Semitism that provided the foundation, personal failures and resentment during his youth in Vienna, the trauma of Germany's defeat in World War I, and the humiliating Treaty of Versailles, the powerful stab-in-the-back myth that blamed Jews for the loss, 19th century racial pseudoscience that portrayed Jews as a biological threat, Hitler's own fanatical belief that he was destined to save the German race, the political usefulness of having a clear, visible scapegoat to unite people against Hitler did not invent anti-Semitism, but he transformed it into a central state ideology and turned it into industrial genocide. Understanding how this hatred developed is not just about the past. It is a warning about how prejudice, conspiracy theories, economic despair, and charismatic authoritarian leadership can combine to produce unimaginable evil. The Holocaust remains one of the darkest and most important chapters in human history. By studying the origins of Nazi anti-Semitism, we honor the memory of the victims and strengthen our ability to recognize and resist hatred in our own time. If this video helped you better understand one of history's most disturbing questions, please like the video, subscribe,